Good evening and thank you for joining us on the War Diary on the 417th day of the war. Here are the main highlights of the day at 8:30 p.m. Beirut time. The Israeli Security Cabinet has approved the ceasefire agreement with Lebanon. The agreement should be effective tomorrow morning. Until then, Israeli bombardments will intensify. Netanyahu cites three reasons for a ceasefire, and I quote: 1. To focus on the Iranian threat. 2. To refresh the army forces and resupply. And 3. To disconnect the fronts and isolate Hamas. End of quote. Despite the announcement of an impending ceasefire, bombardments continue and intensify between Hezbollah and Israel. In the southern suburb of Beirut, Israeli warplanes carried out multiple simultaneous strikes. In the afternoon, the Israeli army issued a warning to evacuate 20 buildings in Hadath Har Tahrik, Ghubayri and Burj al-Barajne before targeting them simultaneously in a terrifying scene. The Israeli Air Force chose the last hours before the settlement to be planted with terror, fire and the sound of explosions in the heart of Beirut from Mazra'a to Hamra and Nuwayri. There were 3 raids that targeted the capital Beirut so far: Hamra near the Banque du Liban, Barbour near the Saada oven, and Nuwayri near the police station. In the latest attacks, a house in a building next to Saudi cell in Barbour was bombed. The Lebanese Ministry of Health announced that 3 people were killed and 10 injured as a result of the Israeli airstrike on the Barbour area of the capital Beirut. People in Jnah evacuated on foot. Israeli warplanes dropped leaflets over Beirut's southern suburb, indicating that tonight would be a different scenario. Moving on to the situation in the south, 2 Israeli raids on Al-Qard al-Hassan branches in Sur and Saida. Israeli warplanes launched a series of raids targeting the Rashidi refugee camp square, which is crowded with people, and ambulances and youth work to transport those killed and wounded. Civil defense teams continue to remove the injured from inside the camp. The Public Health Emergency Operations Center of the Ministry of Public Health announced in a statement that, and I quote, the Israeli raid on the Rashidi in Sur killed 2 people, including a child, and the removal of body parts whose identity will be determined by DNA tests, in addition to the injury of 22 people. The Israeli army also shelled houses in Baalbek. Hezbollah announced that it had shelled the settlement of Kiryat Shmona with a barrage of quality rockets. It also stated that from inside the city of Khiyam, they targeted a Merkava tank with a guided missile near the municipal center. Hezbollah also targeted an infantry training camp south of Nahariya with a squadron of quality rockets. The Israeli army announced that it killed Ahmed Sobhi, Hezbollah's commander of operations in the coastal sector. Israeli army radio reported that troops from the Golani Brigade arrived in the Litani River area at a depth of 10 kilometers. Israel's Channel 13 reported that, and I quote, the army is preparing for the last rocket bursts from Hezbollah before the implementation of the agreement, end of quote. The Lebanese Ministry of Public Health reported that 3,768 people have been killed by Israel and 15,699 wounded since the start of the war on Lebanon. Moving on to the situation in Palestine, Gaza's Ministry of Health has revealed a dramatic death toll of 44,249 since the start of the war over a year ago. In the last 24 hours, at least 14 people have been killed, bringing to 104,746 the total number of wounded in this territory ravaged by clashes since the initial attack on October 7, 2023. Gaza's emergency services are paralyzed by fuel shortages, forcing rescue vehicles to come to a complete standstill in the north of the territory, an area particularly hard hit by Israeli strikes. The First Aid Agency warned that without diesel, relief operations would not be able to resume. In the meantime, the inhabitants, faced with an extreme shortage of food and medical care, are rummaging through the rubble to survive. The humanitarian situation is worsening as hospitals face closure in the next 48 hours due to fuel shortages. And that's it for today's recap. See you tomorrow for another roundup of the situation. Until then, stay connected on our website www.thisisbeirut.com and on all our social media platforms.